stories glow. Palm lantern ignite, where the tales will flow. Whispers of the night, under moonlit skies. Every word so bright, in your minded eyes. Lantern light guides you through the night. Every tale in sight makes your heart ignite.
Osas had just returned home from boarding school after writing his senior school certificate examination, hoping to gain admission into university soon. But the excitement was short-lived. His world crumbled when he learned that his father had died 2 days earlier. His mother, wanting him to concentrate on his final exams, had kept the heartbreaking news from him. Osas was their only child. After his birth, his mother had tried and failed to conceive again. 2 months after his father's death, the bank reclaimed their home. His father had used it as collateral for a business loan he could no longer repay. His mother, a full-time housewife, had nothing to fall back on. She and Osas moved in with her only brother. The love between his parents had been deep and true. It was no surprise when, 5 months after her husband's death, Osas' mother fell gravely ill. 2 months later, she joined her beloved in eternal rest. Osas, now orphaned and alone, continued living with his uncle. But his uncle's wife began making repeated, inappropriate advances toward him. One evening, Osas told his uncle he was stepping out and never returned. With his meager savings from odd jobs, he traveled from Benin to Lagos, clinging to hope. In Lagos, he had no family, no home, only faith. He found refuge in one of his family's church branches, where the assistant pastor allowed him to sleep in the church and work as a clerk. The senior pastor, a man who clearly called himself and not of God, exploited talented youth and refused to pay them what they deserved. But the assistant pastor saw something special in Osas. Aware of Osas' desire to return to school, Osas had a different spirit. He was grounded, wise beyond his years, and fully surrendered to God, an encounter that began in his 3rd year at boarding school. Through his kindness and work ethic at church, Osas secured a job as a housekeeper for Mr. Benson. Mr. Benson was a Benin man and a well-respected businessman. Mr. Benson was the CEO of Patricia Insurance Group. He named his company after his 2 daughters, Patricia and Thelma. In the early years of their marriage, his wife was a full-time housewife to focus on raising their children. As the children grew older and entered secondary school, she launched her own human resources company with her husband's support. Mr. Benson had been observing Osas quietly. The boy reminded him of his younger self, full of fire and purpose. Mr. Benson's wife had placed the housekeeping job ad in the church bulletin, but it was the Holy Spirit that nudged Osas toward Mr. Benson instead. His wife was engaged with the women's meeting. Mrs. Benson, though a professing Christian, had a heart entangled in classism and likely would have turned Osas away. Osas walked up to Mr. Benson for the job. He was with his 2 daughters, and they were waiting for Mrs. Benson in the cathedral. Osas told them that he knew how to make delicious meals and was good at keeping the home clean. He learned a lot from his late mom. Mr. Benson was excited to offer him the job as he felt led and acted on faith. Osas' impeccable English and his quiet confidence impressed him. You could tell that Osas had a great basic education. They hadn't had much luck with previous housekeepers, many of whom were caught stealing on CCTV. When asked when he could start, Osas said he was ready immediately. Mr. Benson told him to go and gather his belongings while he spoke to his wife. Normally, she handled the hiring of domestic staff, but he felt led by the Spirit to make this decision himself. When Mrs. Benson returned from her meeting, her husband introduced Osas to her as their new housekeeper. She wasn't too pleased, especially since he hadn't discussed the decision with her beforehand. Mr. Benson took her aside and persuaded her to give a male housekeeper a try. reminding her that they hadn't had much luck with the female staff. Osas followed them home. He moved into the boys' quarters, sharing living facilities with the driver and security guard. On his first day, Patricia, Mr. Benson's eldest daughter, noticed the tear in Osas' trousers. She brought him a box of her father's old clothes. "My dad wanted to give out these clothes," she said softly. "I think he'd be happy if you wore them instead." Osas was moved. "Thank you. I appreciate your kindness." "May God be praised," she said. "How long have you known God personally?" he asked her. "I would say about 2 years," she replied. "I used to go to church with my parents out of routine, but I had a personal encounter with him 2 years ago," she continued. "I took time to reflect on my life and realized I genuinely wanted to serve God, just like my dad. He's my role model. He's wealthy, yet humble. I admire how he helps people without stripping them of their dignity. He truly embodies 1 Corinthians 13. I wanted that same peace he carries, so I sought God for myself." "Wow, the power of parenting," Osas said. Their conversation flowed easily. They spoke of God, of their spiritual encounters, and the peace they found in walking with him. Osas admired how Patricia looked up to her father, not just for his success, but for his humility and Christ-like love. Over time, Osas' culinary talent began to shine. His meals, both local and intercontinental, delighted the family. Mrs. Benson, though initially skeptical, warmed to him. 3 months in, Mr. Benson asked Osas about his dreams. The young man admitted that he once aspired to be an engineer, but Lagos in life had led him to discover a deeper passion: cooking. Osas wanted to become a chef and one day own his own chain of restaurants. His boss was further impressed when Osas asked him if he would be his mentor. He gladly accepted. He saw Osas as a son he never had. He told Osas he was impressed that, unlike most boys his age, he didn't ask for money, but sought mentorship instead. He added, "When you ask for fish, it only sustains you for a moment, but when you ask to be taught how to fish, it can sustain you for a lifetime." He gave Osas access to his personal library and set monthly reading goals. Osas devoured every book like a starving man. He was not just dreaming, he was preparing. 1 year later, Osas was cooking in the kitchen when Patricia, who had just gained admission to study medicine at the university, came in to share the good news. She thanked him for his help, especially in physics, her weakest subject. Osas smiled, thanked God, and baked a red velvet cake to celebrate her success. The Bensons were thrilled. Thelma, their younger daughter, was in her final year of secondary school and away at boarding school. That evening, Mr. Benson invited Osas to join them at the dining table. He showered him with praises and told him to name anything he wanted. It would be done. But Osas, ever humble, said he was satisfied with his mentorship. Mr. Benson looked at him with admiration. He was proud, deeply proud of the man Osas was becoming. Mrs. Benson grew jealous of the closeness between her husband and Osas. She began to distance the young man from him, subtly creating barriers. Whenever Osas asked to see Mr. Benson, she would step in and claim he was busy. At one point, she placed a large sum of money on the shelf in Mr. Benson's library. Knowing Osas frequented the space, she was hoping to catch him in a moment of weakness. But the young man remained focused. He saw the money and returned it to Mr. Benson without hesitation. Frustrated, she reviewed CCTV footage, searching for anything that might tarnish his character, but she found nothing. Eventually, she sighed and resigned to fate, accepting that Osas was, indeed, a godly man. Osas later enrolled in a part-time culinary school, followed by a business program. 2 years passed. When Osas completed his schooling, Mr. Benson sat him down again. "What's next?" he asked. "I want to open a restaurant. I don't have the funds yet, but I'll start with a mobile kitchen to build capital and clientele." Mr. Benson smiled. "Instead of money, I'm giving you a contract to supply lunch to all Pathol Insurance branches. Also, take my 2-bedroom flat in Festac rent-free for a year. It's yours for storage and meal prep." Osas couldn't believe his ears. He fell to the floor, weeping with gratitude. He started his mobile restaurant, and it flourished. The Bensons hired another housekeeper. Osas poured his energy into building his company. Mr. Benson bought him new clothes, reminding him, "People notice your appearance before they taste your food. You must leave a lasting impression with both." Osas began supplying sumptuous meals to Pathol Insurance Group. The staff loved his food and soon referred him to their families and other companies. He officially registered his business and hired a small team. He was no longer just a boy with dreams. He was laying the foundation for a legacy. Within a year, Osas secured an office space and purchased a bus to expand his delivery reach. He eventually saved enough to pay rent for the flat in Fe. But when he handed the money to Mr. Benson, the older man gently pushed it back. "Consider it my little token of support," he said with a proud smile. Osas partnered with a colleague to establish an organic farm where he sourced most of his ingredients. His fresh approach and consistent work ethic began to subtly revolutionize the local food industry. At his restaurant launch, the entire Benson family was present. Patricia, now in her 3rd year of medical school, watched him with admiration. She had grown into a beautiful, godly woman. And she liked Osas, really liked him. She could swear there was chemistry between them. All the guys who tried to get Patricia's attention at school were shallow, flashy, boastful, and lacking depth. But Osas, he was a breath of fresh air. He truly knew God, and it showed in his actions. He was gentle, dedicated, and thoughtful. She loved how he celebrated their achievements with special meals, and how he'd prepare bulk food for her and Thelma to take back to school. Thelma had just gained admission to study finance at the university, and Osas celebrated every milestone. He was disciplined, never flirtatious, and always respectful. And yet, he was undeniably handsome, tall, charming, and with a voice that could melt tension. Osas was, in every way, unforgettable. Patricia quickly chided herself. "Girl, you're lusting over this man." Another voice in her head protested. "You are admiring an excellent piece of God's work." But Osas had always kept a respectful distance, aware of Mrs. Benson's disapproval, and was determined to be established before pursuing a relationship. That night, after the guests left, Patricia stayed behind. She walked over to Osas when he was alone, and all the guests were gone. She didn't go home with her parents. She had plans to go back to school that evening. But the truth was, she wanted to spend time with Osas. "It's been a long day. Do you need help with anything?" she asked behind him. Osas was startled, but he could remember that soft-spoken voice in his sleep. He turned to the smiling face of Patricia. "Patricia, I thought you left with your parents," Osas said, slightly startled. "I'll be going back to school from here," she replied. "How's school going?" he asked with a calm smile. "It's going well. Do you need help with anything?" she offered, her voice soft. The same voice that had kept him smiling to himself at night. Patricia was gentle, smart, and lovely. Above all, she was godly. The only thing holding Osas back from telling her how he felt was her mother, and the fact that he needed to establish his footing before bringing a woman into his life. Still, he had seen the way Patricia looked at him. He knew the feeling was mutual. "My staff are on top of everything," he replied. A comfortable silence settled between them as they stared at each other. Then Osas broke the silence. "Come, have a seat. I kept your favorite ice cream just for you." At the mention of ice cream, Patricia's face lit up. They sat and chatted over cones of ice cream, their laughter mingling with thoughtful conversation. They spoke about their favorite scriptures and what those verses meant to them in different seasons of life. Then, Osas opened up. He shared his story with Patricia. How his parents had once been well off, and how he, their only child, was deeply loved. But his father had made a series of poor business decisions, driven more by blind faith than sound judgment. He trusted a pastor who urged him to invest in a business deal without proper due diligence. The deal collapsed, and with it went their savings, their home, and eventually, his father's health. The shock led to a heart attack that took his life. His parents had been lovers in every sense, committed, spiritual, inseparable. When his father passed, his mother simply couldn't cope. A few months later, she followed him, leaving Osas alone in the world. Patricia listened intently, her eyes filled with empathy. "I'm so sorry, Osas," she said softly. "But I'm glad you met my dad. You've come so far, and he always says he learns from you too." Osas smiled, humbled. "I'm truly grateful for him. He's been both a spiritual and business mentor. I've learned so much." Patricia leaned forward. "You're different from most young men I know. Most of my cousins only want money from Daddy. Even some employees just want to get rich quickly. You actually put in the work. I know Daddy is proud of you." "Thank you," Osas replied a little shyly. There was a pause, warm and unhurried. "It's getting late, Pat," he said gently. "Did you drive down?" "No, I took a cab," she replied, secretly delighted by the way he called her Pat. "All right then, give me a few minutes to close up, and I'll drive you back to school." "Oh, it's fine. I can just take another cab," she said. "Please, I insist," Osas responded gently. "You waited for me. It's only right. I ensure you get back safely." She smiled and nodded. "Okay, thank you." As Osas drove her to school, the silence between them was anything but awkward. They exchanged quiet glances, each one lingering just a bit longer than the last. When they arrived at her hostel, Osas stepped out of the car and walked her to the entrance. Then, unexpectedly, he took her hand. It caught her off guard, but she liked it a lot. She had given him all the green lights a woman could give. At this point, there was no hiding it. She was in love with him. "How about we hang out sometime next week?" he asked, his voice low and sincere. She nodded, almost in disbelief. "Someone, please pinch me," she thought, butterflies fluttering wildly in her stomach. Outwardly, she kept her composure, but inside, she was glowing. They agreed to meet at an art gallery. Patricia, an art enthusiast, was thrilled by the thoughtful choice. Osas wanted their first outing to be different from the typical dinner date, something meaningful. They exchanged a final smile, said their goodnights, and Osas drove back to Festac, singing a love song with butterflies in his stomach.
Underneath the stars, worlds begin to